So, here we are at last. The moment of truth. Do not be fooled, ladies and gentlemen, for while that title does have Saban's name on it, this is technically Hasbro's first produced Power Rangers series since they bought the brand a few months ago. If you've watched my reviews of Super Ninja Steel, you'll know that I, like many other fans, was curious to see how Hasbro's purchase of the franchise would change things going forward. Sure, the new owners didn't do Super Steel any favors outside of an excellent anniversary episode, but I was still holding out hope that things would be different once Beast Morphers premiered. My excitement has wavered more recently, however, after one of the show's episode directors, Simon Bennett, went on Twitter saying that the show's audience was so young they didn't know how to use social media. Just to clarify, he was talking from personal experience, having 2 kids that don't use Twitter, but at the same time, that's not exactly the kind of statement that builds my confidence in Hasbro's ability to make changes, especially since Simon Bennett's comments confirm for me that this season will have the same production team as last year. Regardless of how I feel about that little factoid, the fact remains that this show is finally arrived, so let's see if Hasbro can give this franchise the shot in the arm it needs as we look at Power Rangers Beast Morphers Episode 1, Beasts Unleashed. The episode opens in the city of Coral Harbor, where a news report informs us that Mayor Daniels is preparing to flip the switch that will allow the city to run on Power Rangers Morphin Grid energy called MorphX. Coral Harbor will be the first city to test out MorphX and see if the whole world can run on this renewable energy source, but the reporter questions whether or not this is a dangerous mistake. I think you all know what my position is on this topic.
Now that you have become Power Rangers, you must follow 3 basic rules or lose the protection of the power. First, never use your power for personal gain.
Cut to the Riptide Gym, where a guy named Blaze is teaching a karate class, but one of his students, Devin, is busy listening to music as he waits for Blaze to teach more challenging moves. This results in the two sparring, with Blaze losing his cool as he tries to beat on Devin, but Devin is actually skilled enough to get the better of Blaze. The confrontation is stopped, however, by Devin's father, the mayor, and as he rides home with his son, Mayor Daniels expresses disappointment that Devin blew off a job interview to go hang out at the gym. Daniels goes on to say that Devin's hobbies of video games and karate aren't going to take him anywhere, right before he tells the driver to take him to Grid Battle Force, a place with a notorious battle simulator. Really setting the example there, Dad. Wanting to try out the battle simulator, Devin asks if he could come, but the mayor refuses, so Devin just secretly follows his dad into the building after he leaves the limo. Inside, Mayor Daniels goes through a security check, and judging by the reused Victor and Monty theme, these two are our new comic relief. Though despite how many bad flashbacks I'm having while listening to this music, the scene itself is pretty funny, and Devin's able to sneak past security through the shenanigans. The security is stopped by the arrival of Zoe Reeves, who explains who Mayor Daniels is, and after introducing herself, Zoe offers to take the mayor to the commander. As they walk, Zoe expresses how excited she is at the prospect of MorphX, saying she's got a lot of ideas for its many uses, but first needs to get out of laundry duty. Zoe goes on to say that she trained to be a Battle Force cadet, and even though she got cut, she believes she can still make a difference since she solves big problems rather than runs from them. Commander Shaw then arrives to take the mayor to the lab, where she shows him the MorphX and introduces their lead scientist, child prodigy Nate Silva. Commander Shaw says that Nate was able to tap into the morphing grid at age 10, with the doctor saying that with MorphX they'll have access to the most powerful energy source in the known universe. Mayor Daniels has concerns, however.
That's exactly what I'm afraid of.
It seems that the mayor thinks what we're doing is a mistake.
A huge mistake. Since before you were born, every monster out there in every dimension, from Rita Repulsa to Sledge and Galvanax, they've all wanted to take the Rangers' power and rule the universe. And now that you've wrapped it up with a ribbon, some evil mind will try to take it again. And when they come, this place, Grid Battle Force, won't be able to stop them.
I mean, it's hard to disagree when you put it like that. Despite the mayor's doubts, Grid Battle Force does have a security protocol in place, but before we get to that, Devin's nearly caught by security as we're led into the intro. I know, with all this world building going on, I nearly forgot I hadn't talked about this yet. Anyway, this theme song is much better than Ninja Steel's was, helped by the fact that it's short, sweet, and to the point. The addition of the robotic voice may be a little too Transformers, but Hasbro is the company behind Transformers, so I think of it more as a signature. future.
Power Rangers.
Back to the episode, Devin is brought into the morphing lab where he's nearly spotted by his father, but the mayor's attention is on Commander Shaw as she explains the Grid Battle Force secret weapons. By mixing the Morphex with animal DNA, the crew intend to create their very own Power Rangers should a threat to the Morphin Grid arrive. As Dr. Silva explains the layout of the team's weapons and morphers, Devin sees something go from the computer into a Morphex tube before Nate demonstrates a transporting tool that can teleport anything anywhere. Mayor Daniels then decides that he wants to meet the new Rangers, but the commander says that their identities must remain secret, so the mayor heads off to the ceremony, wishing Shaw good luck. After the mayor leaves, Commander Shaw gets the team ready to morph, revealing them to be Blaze and crew from the gym, but before Devin can process that information, he's suddenly startled by, "Oh god, it's the Great Devourer! Don't let it bite you!" Sorry. With his cover blown, Devin's immediately grabbed by security, and as he's dragged to a holding cell, he tries to convince everyone of the computer snake he saw, but no one believes him. Wanting to be thorough, Commander Shaw orders for a complete check on the computer system, while a girl named Roxy and a guy named Ravi get ready to join Blaze as the new Rangers. As the two talk, it's revealed that they were dating before they were chosen for this project, with Ravi being the one to break things off since Rangers can't date Rangers, but it's clear they still have feelings for each other. Once the teens get into position, Dr. Silva informs Commander Shaw that there was no virus detected in the computer system, but once they flip the switch for Morphex to power the city, the computer virus Evox makes his presence known. Evox says the Morphin Grid will be his as he starts to infect the Morphex, so Commander Shaw orders for the sequence to be terminated while the entire building goes on security lockdown. The door to Devin's holding cell malfunctions, however, allowing him to escape, with Zoe also springing into action since she doesn't run from big problems. The security team also tries to help, but they accidentally run into a laundry bin. Back in the lab, Nate's unable to stop the morphing sequence, allowing Evox to create an evil clone avatar of Blaze, who quickly fights off security as Devin and Zoe make it inside. The two see the creation of an evil clone of Roxy, and knowing that the villains are going to do the same to Ravi, Devin shoots a tube, cutting off Evox's connection to the Morphex. The battle ensues as the teens try to fight off the bad guys, with Ravi even joining in once he realizes what's happened to Roxy. The fight doesn't last long though, as the three are soon captured by evil Roxy, but Nate shoots down a metal grate to free the teens, and
initiating morph sequence. What is happening?
oh yeah, now it's a fair fight. As the battle begins anew, our heroes discover they have individual powers specific to the animal DNA they were mutated with, such as Devin's speed of a cheetah, Zoe's jackrabbit hopping ability, and Ravi's gorilla strength. Still, even with their new powers, the evil clones are hard to take down, so the team uses Nate's teleporter to transport the dastardly duo to another dimension, thus saving the day for now. After the fight, Ravi watches as Roxy's put into a stasis pod, flashing back to that regrettable moment where he decided to end things with her before he meets with the other Rangers to thank them for saving his life. The teens properly introduce themselves to each other before Commander Shaw comes in wanting a status report on Roxy and Blaze. Nate says that since Evox created evil clones of Roxy and Blaze through the Morphin Grid, they are now linked, meaning that the only way the heroes can wake Blaze and Roxy up is by destroying their evil counterparts. Nate goes on to say that while he did send the clones to a different dimension, they're intelligent enough to make it back to the city, but Commander Shaw's not worried since they now have Power Rangers who can combat them. Ravi then tells his mother that she can count on him before the commander turns her attention to the new recruits. Zoe says that she'll protect the city until Roxy's able to, with Devin adding that he'll help any way he can, and the episode ends with Ravi taking his teammates to the battle simulator so they can learn all they need to know. This episode is utterly fantastic and I loved every second of it. This right here is how you execute a season premiere for a Power Rangers show. There is so much stuff crammed into this one episode that I honestly was waiting for a to be continued to appear on the screen right up until the team morphed. Still, even with all the content in this premiere, none of it feels rushed, primarily because every scene in this episode exists to either progress the plot or plant seeds for story and character arcs going forward. However, before I really dive into that stuff, I want to talk about all the familiar elements from past Power Ranger series that this show recontextualizes for its own purposes. On a certain level, a lot of this episode plays like a best-of compilation of the entire Power Ranger series. I mean, you've got that scene at the gym that's very reminiscent reminiscent of Jason's karate class in Day of the Dumpster. Devin has a similar relationship with his father to what Wes went through in Time Force. Zoe's a failed cadet like Boom was in SPD, and Nate Silva is basically a combination of Dr. K and Billy Cranston. However, the bizarre thing for me personally was that despite the fact that last season was the one to focus on ninjas, this episode reminded me the most of Ninjago, and not just because the snake is the main villain. Funnily enough, I thought of Ninjago Rebooted while watching this, since that season also had an evil computer virus as the main threat, and had clone foot soldiers that were able to match the heroes. Side note, if you want to hear my thoughts on Ninjago Rebooted, you can check out the playlist link in the description, but for the time being, let's get back to Power Rangers, shall we? As I said earlier, a lot of the story threads are introduced to be expanded upon later, so much so that I'll be really disappointed if this show is unable to pay off everything that was set up here. Regardless, I feel that the best way to discuss all the major beats of this episode is by talking about every recurring character, going from least important to most important. First on the docket, the security team, who are least important because I don't know their names. Also, they don't interact with anyone other than the mayor, but despite that, I got a good sense of their dynamic through the two scenes they were in, with the girl being a tough no-nonsense security guard, while her counterpart is a bumbling coward. Simple concept, but if used properly, this duo can be effective. Next, Evox, who doesn't have that much screen time, and the only thing we know about him is that he's a computer virus that looks like a snake. Though I get the feeling that we'll learn more about this big bad in the next episode, so I'll put a pin in that for now. Next, Nate Silva, who seems like the one that will be interacting with the Rangers more than Commander Shaw, even though they both will most likely serve the mentor role. Nate will definitely be in charge of making weapons for the team, but it remains to be seen if he feels any responsibility towards what happened to Blaze and Roxy, since it was his computer system and MorphX formula that were infected by Evox. The other side characters are more or less intertwined with the main three, so I'll go ahead and talk about the Rangers themselves here to better illustrate how their interactions with the rest of the cast inform potential character arcs. As I already mentioned, Yellow Ranger Zoe Reeves is similar to Boom only because she was cut from her rank like he was, but outside of that, she's almost an entirely different character since she's determined to prove herself as a person who can make a difference. It's also important to note that while she's now given the opportunity to prove herself, she does feel bad about the circumstances that led to her becoming a ranger, even expressing regret at how she wasn't able to save Roxy. Should Roxy ever wake up, it will create an interesting conflict for her, but I get the feeling that we'll have to wait a while for that development, so it'll be nice to see how this show builds her character in the meantime. Ravi Shaw is at first glance your typical Blue Ranger in that he likes to follow the rules. In fact, he was willing to break up with his girlfriend because it's against the rules for Rangers to date each other. Granted, that might be because his mother is the commander of Grid Battle Force, and as an aside, I am curious to see how this show is going to handle 2/3 of the Rangers having parents of high-ranking authority. Still, having Roxy be one of Evox's victims was a stroke of genius because it gives Ravi much more depth since he feels guilt over having to break up with her now that there's a possibility they won't be getting back together. We might see him start to break the rules now over this incident, and he could even push back against his mother since he blames her for having to leave Roxy. But that's just pure speculation from me at this point. It's also worthy to note that Ravi is the only member of this Ranger team that was actually trained to be a Ranger, which can mean one of two things. Either Ravi is going to be the temporary leader of the team until Devin is confident enough to take the reins as the Red Ranger, or Devin and Ravi will butt heads over the Blue Ranger trying to act like the leader. Based on what happens in this episode, I'm leaning more towards the two butting heads, since Devin very clearly has problems with figures of authority. I mean, his dad is the mayor of the city, and yet he still feels the need to disobey his father and sneak into a highly secured facility to essentially play a video game. Now, it's not clear whether or not Devin feels he can do these types of things because he's the mayor's son, but even if the show doesn't go that route, Ravi can still use that fact against Devin in their potential feud. I should point out that while Devin is constantly breaking the rules, at no point does he feel like a bad person, and part of that is thanks to Rory D. Travis's acting, since he brings so much charisma to this role. It also helps that the first time we see Devin disagree with authority is in that confrontation with Blaze, and let's be honest, that was mostly Blaze's fault for wanting to beat on the guy, rather than calmly teach him a lesson like Jason did Bulk in Mighty Morphin Episode 1. This scene is great, by the way, because not only does it set up Devin and Blaze's feud before they've had a proper general fight, but I can't wait to see how their dynamic will change should the Rangers succeed in waking Blaze from Evox's deep sleep. Overall, this episode is better than anything I could have hoped for. I know that I started this review talking about how skeptical I was about Simon Bennett, but seeing how he co-directed this episode, I'd like to send my deepest apologies to this man. It's clear from the tone of this premiere that he merely misspoke and that this series is not going to pander to the young audience while insulting its older fanbase. I mean, just look at all the stuff I was able to sink my teeth into from this one episode that is 100% recommended. As far as Hasbro's concerned, if the goal of this episode was to prove that this franchise is now in good hands, then mission accomplished. The only question that remains now is whether or not they can keep this momentum going forward, but after this, I'm not worried. I'm Nick, aka IronBat1993, and may the power protect you.